Today, I'm going on a style journey with serial entrepreneur who founded a string of game-changing companies in the worlds of beauty and wellness. She's recognised globally as an industry leader, a business visionary, a beauty expert, and an inspiration for female entrepreneurs everywhere, the truly brilliant Marcia Kilgore. In 1997, Time magazine chose a 29-year-old Kilgore as their cover star, pegging her as one of the new generation of entrepreneurs whose hard work, ingenuity, and fearlessness trumped the networking business school bigshots. In May 2011, when Oprah Winfrey's final show aired, Oprah referred to her former facialist, Kilgore, as one of the most inspiring people she'd ever met. In 2022, the Sunday Times said her new digitally native business had forever changed the way we shop for cosmetics. In between, Kilgore has sold one business to LVMH, another to Alliance Boots Walgreens, and started 3 others, recognised by Vogue UK as one of the most powerful women of 2023 in their power list. Hello and welcome, Marcia.
Thanks, Amanda. So good to be here.
Oh, it's lovely to have you here. Usually we meet in Switzerland,
yes.
But we go back
under duress.
Under duress, climbing mountains together, and we talk so much to forget that we are climbing, but we feel so good at the top.
We feel great at the top.
Now, I know we were trying to work it out this weekend when we first met, and I think it was back in the 90s during your Bliss Spa heydays in London, and I have to admit that I followed your career in awe as you built and sold Bliss, followed by building and selling the upbeat, tongue-in-cheek Soap and Glory. And not content with those 2 juggernaut successes, you founded the biomechanics meets fashion footwear brand FitFlop. You've only sold 65 million pairs of sandals, sneakers and boots worldwide to date, and probably another million as we speak. And if that wasn't enough, in 2016 you created my slight obsession, the fabulous Buyers Club skincare and makeup brand Beauty Pie, bringing luxury beauty to a wider audience. And knowing you, there'll be many more chapters. But as the complete beauty pie junkie that I am, I would love you to explain to my style-hungry audience, because it's such a disruptor in the beauty industry, how the whole thing works, what inspired you. Take us on that journey.
Oh, to create Beauty Pie, I mean, it was such an obvious one. Usually when I create a business, I am trying to create something that I myself would like to buy or shop from or have. Beauty Pie was easy because I had sold my beauty business, which was Soap and Glory. And I realized when I was in an airport in Hong Kong going to work on a footwear collection in Dongguan that I hadn't bought my own beauty products in probably 20 years. And I didn't really understand how much they cost. Because when you're in charge of a beauty brand and when you've got one, you have labs from all over the world sending you free samples, sending you submissions so that you might buy their submissions, rebrand them and put them on the shelf as your own. I was constantly receiving boxes and boxes of, it was always like Christmas, right? Boxes of samples from labs. And it was so great. It was like, oh my God, I love that lab. And a box would show up and you'd open it up and there would be all of these products to try. So I hadn't actually shopped for beauty products in 20 years. So maybe I'd have a few gifts from different people, but it never occurred to me how expensive things had gotten on the other side. So like George Bush, I believe there was a time when he was president and he went into a grocery store. He had no idea how much milk cost because it had been so long since he had to go buy his own milk. It was kind of the same. Obviously, I'm a Democrat, but I had no idea how much good moisturizer cost. So I'm in the airport in Hong Kong about to go to Dongguan where they don't heat the factories in the winter until it gets really, really cold. And I had forgotten to bring facial moisturizer and I was going to be out there for a couple of weeks. And I thought, you know what, let me just go to duty free. I hadn't been in a duty free to buy anything in years. And I headed over to one of the, well-known high quality Asian brands where there were a lot of choices of moisturizers, and I had been given one of those moisturizers by a friend who worked for one of those brands many years before, so I knew it was a really nice texture, et cetera, and I went to buy it, and I grabbed it from the shelf, and it was 150 pounds or dollars or whatever, whatever they're selling it in.
Too much.
I just thought, are you kidding me? It's like, who is paying $150? And then I realized, oh my God, everybody's paying this much for the moisturizer. And I looked at it, looked at the ingredients, how it was packaged, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, well, this costs $5 to make, maybe, and I thought, I can't do it. I can't pay $150 for something that costs $5 to make. And I literally went to a factory for 2 weeks in the cold at probably the age of, 40 something, and didn't have moisturizer because it just seemed so ridiculous to pay that kind of markup. And I had a similar situation probably a couple of months later where I went to Italy, and one of the labs that makes all the good makeup for all the good brands. And they also make some of the cheaper makeup for some of the cheaper brands, but they make all the luxury makeup for all the luxury cosmetic brands. They had invited me to their open house, probably knowing that at some point I would start another brand and start buying things from them again. And they gave me a bunch of samples. So I had my bag full of samples, and I'm in the train station in Milan. And there happens to be a Sephora there. And I've got all these samples that they've been giving me over the last couple of days of the show and tell. Because it's kind of like a buffet. You go in, they show you all their new technology. They say, we have this lipstick, that, this, that's that. And you kind of choose, right, as a brand.
Next time, I want to come and carry your bag. But anyhow,
that's exactly it. I remember I had the bag over my shoulder. And I knew what was in there because I had sort of chosen. I was like, that's interesting. This is interesting. You try all the different samples and the textures, and you choose which ones feel really luxurious. They'll tell you what the ingredient lists are, and so that's sort of a starting point. And then you can make some tweaks. You'd mix the colors, but the formulations were all in my bag. And I walked into a Sephora, which is in the Milan train station, and I saw so many items that probably were on preview or on limited. They get the first shot at it for certain brands that had big distribution. This lab will sell them that product first for 6 months, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, oh my God. I looked at the prices in Sephora, and I knew what was in my bag and how much that would cost if we were to buy it as a, cosmetics company. And the difference, again, was like 12, 15 times from X factory to sitting on a shelf. And I thought, well, A, I've got $5,000 worth of street value cosmetics in this bag over my shoulder. And second, while I was getting on the train, I thought, oh my God, all my friends would love to come here and do this with me. That was it. And then all the hair on my body went up, when your hair stands on end. And I thought, that's it. How do we get everyone to have this really fun experience of kind of being able to shop for the really good stuff direct from the lab or direct from a warehouse where you don't have to go, I really want that, but it's, 60 pounds. You can go, I love that. Let me just get 5. And so I had to then figure out, well, how do you do it? That was a much longer kind of consideration, and building the idea of it, and how much stock do you need, and how does a membership work, and all of that. But there was some precedent. There were brands, like Netflix. There were brands like Everlane at the time that had just started out, where people were doing this thing where they were cutting out middlemen, and they were bringing products for much less direct to customers. So I had a few guidelines to follow, but I didn't tell the labs what I was doing until the day before we had a feature in Vogue.
Yeah, I mean, were you scared at any point? Because these big beauty companies are enormous. They have so much muscle.
They have a lot of muscle, and that's exactly why I didn't tell the labs. Because I thought, my God, if they know what I'm doing, then I'm about to rip the wool off of everybody's eyes and expose the markups in the cosmetics industry for what they are. They might not manufacture for us anymore. So I had to buy the inventory and get it into the warehouses and have enough inventory for 18 months, right? Forecasting on how many members we thought would join, so that if those labs decided not to sell us anything, we'd have the opportunity to go somewhere else and remanufacture with someone else. So it was a little bit of a risk because you don't know, no one might join, right? Or everyone might join. The labs might not care at all, or they might go, are you kidding me? And close the door on you. And we didn't know. But I did think, first I thought, I'm going to need a bulletproof vest. Speaking of our weighted vests, my weighted vest would have come in handy because I thought everyone's going to kill me, right? The first thought was, oh my God, if I do this and I show people how much cosmetics really cost to make and skincare and everything else, everyone is going to hate, or it was actually the industry is going to hate me, right? And then I thought, but millions of women will love me.
They so do. Now, for those couple of women that might be listening to this who aren't already Beauty Pie subscribers, can you just give them the elevator pitch as to what Beauty Pie is? Because I really believe that we all need to know, and we all need to be members, because I am just obsessed with it.
Thank you, Amanda. I would love to pitch everyone my elevator pitch. Beauty Pie is a buyer's club for people who love skincare, makeup, hair care, beautiful candles. We have supplements. We have a lot of different categories now. We started with makeup, and then we expanded into skincare, of course, because that's really my area. And then we expanded into supplements and body care and hair care and perfumes and candles and everything. And what we do is we buy in large quantities from the world's leading third-party labs. So those that manufacture for other high-end brands, whether that's a Tom Ford or, what is high-end anyway? It's luxury quality brands. And so we buy from the same manufacturers that they buy from, and we buy the best quality product with the most cutting-edge science. In skincare, we actually formulate with those labs, but we formulate better than they do. So we tell them what to put into the products, and then we bring the products to our warehouse. And instead of the product costing our members 12 times or 15 times or 20 times what it would normally cost, which is what the average cosmetic industry markup is, it'll usually be between 2 and 3 times what it costs to make. So we're able to disintermediate the normal system and bring products to customers for a quarter, a third, a fifth of what they would normally pay for the same quality.
Thank you. I have to admit that you do this wonderful thing when you place your order, and it comes up with the total, and then it goes, "Congratulations, Amanda. Not only are you beautiful, you're clever too. You have so far saved." And for the sake of this podcast, I am not going to say how many thousands of pounds I've saved.
I have saved 55,000 pounds.
Ooh, well, that's more than me.
But I give a lot of product, of course, to friends also, right? So you end up buying candles and bring them for dinner parties and all that kind of stuff. So it's also very handy just to fill a cupboard.
Amazing. Now, we are not here to talk about your brilliant entrepreneurship, although I could do that all day. I want to know what makes you tick sartorially. So we're going on a style journey. So how did you decide what to wear today?
Oh, well, I dress from a suitcase. Which is
you
always
probably
difficult.
Generally do you?
Yes, I dress a lot from a suitcase. When I need to look styled, it is normally in a suitcase scenario, because if I am in Switzerland, which is where I live, I can just put on, although I will, put on a great cashmere jumper, often one of yours.
Thank you.
And a pair of, trousers, normally something kind of Italian and floppy. And then a pair of FitFlop sandals, and I'm at my desk on Zooms, so I don't necessarily have to be styled up. Any other time, if I'm doing a podcast or an appearance, I am dressing out of a suitcase. So it will be navy, camel, black and white, automatically. And it's usually a great jumper, a great pair of trousers, a great jacket. And that is easy. If I have to go to an event in the evening, it'll usually be some old Comme des Garçons smock type thing, or an Isimaki type thing, because they cram into a suitcase and do not require too much ironing.
Oh, I love you. Are so practical.
I'm incredibly practical.
And you grew up in a small Canadian outback town, is that fair enough? Saskatchewan,
yes. Farming town. I was born in Saskatchewan in a little town called Outlook. Before Outlook was, Microsoft. And it was a beautiful little town on the top of a river that had sort of deep valley. And it was gorgeous, but there's nothing, right? It was like prairies and grain silos and barns and nothing.
And cold?
Oh, my God.
So were you permanently in sort of technical clothing just to
permanently frozen. There was no technical clothing. It was...
You're right, actually.
Yeah, there wasn't. I mean, technical clothing is a relatively recent phenomenon where they've thought about like the different layers and how it holds air and how the air,
So what were you running around wearing as a kid?
I mean, it was survival, right? We did not think so much about how we looked. I don't think anybody, even still, when I go back to visit my mother, people are not really dressing for style. They're dressing just for survival.
I was going to say, did your mother have, was she stylish or was she just functional?
My mother was completely functional. So my mother is still, to this day, I will bring her skincare products. She still will have one bottle of Dr. Bronner's soap in her shower, and she often will use that as her shampoo, her shower gel, her soap. I can't get her to use moisturizer. And I bring her all these, beautiful things that are, of course, safe. She's very green, clean, always has been, the yoga, healthy eating, grinds her own flaxseed, all that kind of stuff. But I can't get her to use moisturizer.
That's why you have such
my life
beautiful skin. Well, all that flaxseed as a child. But so when were you first exposed to fashion then? What was your first what was your early memory of thinking, ooh, that feels good?
Oh, well, that came a lot later when I moved to New York. I'd say my first memory of fashion as such was that we were not a well-off family whatsoever. And my parents used to be quite strict about manners and also kids chipping in and doing their fair share of household work. And we would get new school clothes once a year. And we would get them if we remembered to pick our plate up off the table on the evening that our father had put $40 underneath our plate. And that would be our budget for school clothes for a year, right? So, of course, this was a long time ago. So $40 got you a little bit, but it wasn't like I was rotating 30 outfits. You were rotating 3 or 4, kind of like your school uniform. And if you grew, everything was going to be too small, a little bit too small, until you remembered to pick up your plate on the right night of the week when they had stashed. And that was, yearly. So you didn't put your plate in the dishwasher. You were not wearing clothes for another year.
Whoa. So that's a tough lesson to learn, isn't it?
Yes, to this day, even if I am out at someone else's house for dinner and there is service,
pick up your plate.
My plate is coming up and I am taking it to the dishwasher or to the sink because it's just now it's epigenetic. I wish I could get my sons to do the same thing.
Well,
they don't.
It should be in your DNA by now.
I think so. I think it is. It's like some kind of vibration.
But it missed them. But you got into bodybuilding as a teenager.
I did. I was so bored. There was nothing else to do, right? You're in the middle of Saskatchewan.
So what was the gym look? What were you wearing back in the 80s?
Thank you. Yes, it was the early 80s.
Oh my God, was it the G-string leotard?
No. Thank God they didn't have those in Saskatchewan. I mean, it was, again, choices were sort of few and far between. There were tights. And I remember having T-shirts and having just sort of, typical exercise clothes. But again, not a lot. Saskatoon, Saskatchewan was 20 years behind anywhere else, right? They probably just got a Lululemon.
Well, thank God you missed the G-string
Yes,
unitard.
Did you wear the G-string unitard? Tell the truth.
I had a moment. Don't even go there.
I know. You rocked it. You rocked it.
I've got a photograph. I mean, a modeling photograph. God. Yeah, it just fills me with horror.
But Jane Fonda did it so well. I mean, you can see there was that
those 80s colors. They were just so bad.
and the what were they called? Leg warmers. Remember the
leg warmers and cycle shorts.
Oh my God,
not kind.
But wait, remember Flashdance?
Yes.
Okay, did you go home after you watched Flashdance and just dance around your house?
Oh, completely. But I so did not look like, was it Jennifer
Beal?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I don't think anybody looked like Jennifer Beal in
God, that body
leg warmers.
Was incredible.
Apparently it was a body double.
That makes me feel
a
lot better.
Me too.
But you moved to New York at the age of 17.
I did.
In the 80s.
Yeah.
Do you remember your favorite looks from back then?
Well, at that point, again, I was a personal trainer. So there was a little bit more to buy, but I spent a lot of time in tights, T-shirts, and I made $10 an hour, right?
But you were a bodybuilder, didn't you?
I had a lot
T-shirt.
of... Yes.
That covers the muscles and all that you're trying to...
Well, I know, but if you walk around in tight clothing in New York City in like the late 80s, early 90s, you're just going to get mugged or attacked. However, I was so muscular that even, I was a force.
Did you have a six-pack?
Oh, yes. I had a six-pack. I had biceps, triceps, deltoids. I mean, people would go, "Are you an Olympic athlete?" I would have that.
God.
So I wasn't particularly, I was, again, quite functional until I could afford clothing. I mean, you kind of, when you don't have the budget, you don't look because it's just too painful.
Yeah, no,
it's too
I get that.
to be left out, right? But when you can start to afford a little bit of fashion, and actually in the bodybuilding phase, I was never like Arnold. I was more like, I guess, dancer, sprinter, someone a little bit longer.
Got to see pictures.
It was actually pretty impressive when I look back. I think, how did I do that? I mean, you have to work out 4 hours a day, right? And then you have to eat the healthy diet.
Right
it's
stuff.
like only no carbs. And I mean, I do that now. It still doesn't have the same effect. What has gone wrong? What has gone wrong?
We're just, our bodies evolve.
They do evolve. So I'm doing my best. But it was amazing how when you could try on a good piece of clothing and you have that kind of like really svelte, firm, even though my body is really difficult. So I was prepping and thinking about how I think about clothing. And actually clothing for me has always been a bit of a love-hate relationship, right? It's almost like there's a fight between myself and clothing because Western clothing is not made for my type of body. I have wide shoulders, flat chest, shorter legs, right? Long torso. I am a Japanese body.
So did that lead you to
did.
Japanese fashion?
As soon as I'd walk into Yohji Yamamoto,
you felt home.
Everything looked amazing. Sadly, it was all $2,000 and I was making $10 an hour. So I had to work my way up, But if there was ever an inspiration.
Do you remember the first piece of designer clothing that you saved hard for and bought and thought,
yes,
I feel $1 million in this?
Yes, there was. So I think at the time I was dating this guy who had like a little bit more money than I did and loved Matsuda. Do you remember Matsuda?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know whatever happened to it, but one of the very, I guess, early Japanese designers who made it over to New York. And I don't know, I always went down this one strip of Fifth Avenue between 23rd Street and 22nd, and there was a Matsuda store there. It was when it wasn't the Flatiron yet. It was sort of,
I remember.
Yeah, kind of like Soho, but on Fifth Avenue. And I remember them having a sale, and there was this coat in the window, and it was the most beautiful coat. And it was, I mean, we're talking like 1990, right? It was $1,800, but on sale it was only $9. And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And I thought, well, that's only 90 hours of work for a $900 coat. And I saved up and I got it. And I was probably, 20, right? And still making $10 an hour, but I could not live without that coat.
Oh,
it was so beautiful.
Even over your gym kit, anything.
Oh my God, anything. I mean, t-shirt, that's the thing with a great coat, right? You can put a white t-shirt and whatever, and then you put the coat on and you're a completely different person.
But it's a transformative piece, isn't it?
Coats are everything. Yeah. If you just don't have time or you just throw it on. So I have a terrible weakness for coats and I try not to buy any more, but sometimes I do.
Do you always buy ladies' clothes, women's clothes? Just sort of hearing you talk about your shoulders.
Yeah.
And in this time of very...
Yeah, sort of unisex dressing.
Unisex dressing,
well,
thank you.
These jeans are Too Good. Do you know Too Good?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're unisex.
Yeah.
I don't have that much time. This is the other thing. I don't have a lot of time to go trying on clothes.
Yeah.
So I will tend to repeat myself because I'll just head to where I know I'm going to find stuff. Yeah. And generally I will head to the women's section, but I would try on men's stuff for sure. Why not? And then my son would steal it.
Oh, that's another story. Now, you created the iconic cult beauty destination Bliss Spas in New York. And you had some incredibly famous clients, from Uma Thurman, Madonna, Oprah, and even Calvin Klein, to name a few. Were you ever impressed by their style?
I thought about this, and I thought most of the time, by the time I would see the client, they were delivered to me in a robe.
Yes, I thought about that.
Yeah. So in fact, and often they were coming in at like 7:30 in the morning because we couldn't fit them in during the day, and they'd call at the last minute, and I'd say, "Oh, okay, can't get you in, but if you come at 7:30, I'll come at 7." And they would be just as schlumpy as the average person. And I was trying to think about who just looked fabulous all the time, and there rarely was anyone. However, Shalom Harlow, who was one of the sort of, there were supermodels.
Really,
yeah,
wasn't
she's
she?
kind of a super, maybe A minus. There was super A's.
We won't quote you on that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, she was still a super, but you didn't
was.
hear about her
Yes.
as much.
Yeah.
But it was that like long, tall body, and she was a dancer. And so I think it was just the way she held herself. Yeah. Everything just like hung off of her. Like, I mean, it was amazing.
Something about posture,
yes,
isn't there, that can be so
transformative.
Yes. But when you were, yeah, I know, I'm sitting, I'm pulling my shoulders back. But when you were creating the concept for Bliss,
yes,
how did you work out what you were going to put your
estheticians in? Yeah, well, it had to be, again, if you think about what they're doing all day, it had to be quite practical. Yeah. Conan O'Brien once said that our uniform, especially in the wet body treatment rooms, made us look like sexy tugboat captains.
Can you explain that one to me?
Well, you have to have, you've got to be wearing things where you can scrub people with oily salt and rinse them off, and it stays. You don't have anywhere, and you don't want people to have to change 18 times a day. So when people were doing wet body treatments, which involved like showering people, hosing them off, there's water splashing all over the place, we had to get them like sort of a water resistant or waterproof dungaree, right? But over top of like a cool t-shirt.
Yeah.
So at the time it was like splendid t-shirts or James Purse t-shirts, and we would put a big giant Bliss logo on them, and then they would have these kind of really cool kind of waterproof.
But that's fantastic.
They were fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
super
really
cool.
Fabulous.
Super cool.
And I thought of trying to do something like an issey miyake, right? But those fabrics don't necessarily breathe when you're massaging people.
No.
And so important when you show up to be standing in close proximity to a client that you are fresh. So that was fresh and clean. You had to just think like, okay, fresh and clean and friendly and kind of cool and groovy.
Cool.
Yeah.
Bliss, everything you touch is super cool. But Bliss was my first experience of Marcia, and I just remember everything about it was cool, right? It was it had.
Thanks,
it had some humor to it, had mega luxury to it, and yeah. Anyhow, so my first experience of Bliss was in London, and you moved here to open the spa.
Yes.
Did your personal style change when you hit London from the streets of New York?
You know what? Quite a lot, actually, because when you live in London, in New York, it's about black and white, right? White or a white shirt, generally, Oxford, and everyone is wearing like a white Oxford shirt and a black jacket. Here, you look like a waiter. But in New York, that is what everyone's wearing, and that's what stylish is.
Very much there's a uniform in New York.
Absolutely.
And whereas London is far more eclectic, isn't
much more eclectic.
So
People
how did you
so much
evolve
more
your
style.
Eclecticism?
Well, it was quite difficult for me because I don't know if it's just the way my brain thinks, but I like simplicity.
You're quite a uniform person, I always think.
Just, default, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have so much going on.
Yes.
Like this. I can't look. Even if I put on earrings, sometimes I'm like, I can't. It's too much. It's almost like attention deficit disorder, earring overload.
Yeah.
I just can't look at myself if there's too much going on. And it's the same with clothing. I tried very hard when I moved here to like fit into the mix this color with that color, these pattern mixes. It was really quite difficult. I'd buy a lot of clothes thinking I'm going to break out of my style rut, which wasn't a rut in New York, but it was certainly a rut in London, and everything would just hang there. So I did kind of venture into a little bit more Janya Watanabe, who at the time was doing some really cool colored pattern things, which is different for a Japanese person. And of course, since I'm a Yoji Yamamoto, Comme des Garçons, Amanda Wakeley, or Too Good, or Nilly Lotan type of person, there's not a lot of patterns there, right?
Yeah.
So bringing in those patterns and that color is kind of tough.
Thank you for the little Amanda Wakeley plug there.
Oh my God, the Amanda Wakeley stuff. That is the stuff.
Oh, when you... Stop it.
What?
You're flashing now. Flashing your Wakeley cashmere.
I'm just showing off because of my Wakeley cashmere.
When you did your first big sellout and you suddenly found yourself with a chunk of cash in the bank.
Yes. We called it the Eagle Has Landed Day.
The Eagle has landed. So when the Eagle had landed...
The first eagle.
Did that impact on your buying habits or your style, actually?
Well, of course, I was still like very hands-on in the spa. So day to day, I'm still wearing the uniform. But I do remember, so I think the Eagle landed on like, I don't know, sometime in early April 1990. Was it 1999? Must have been 1999.
I would say several eagles landed, by the way, but anyhow,
well, it was
they
the
landed.
First chunk of the eagle. And it was quite funny. I remember my husband and I, we then got married we were like planning to get married anyway. We got married about 2 weeks later. And for the weekend that we got married, we had a board meeting. So we got married, I think, on a Friday. We had a board meeting on the Monday in New York, so we couldn't really go anywhere. We just got married at City Hall. But we stayed at the Four Seasons, and we ended up calling it the Barney's weekend because Barney's was still open. And we went to the Four Seasons. We stayed there for 2 nights for our sort of wedding nights and ended up just wandering over to Barney's, which was 3 blocks away, and just shopping for that whole weekend. Now, he didn't actually buy that much, but I certainly did. There was a lot of, like a lot of Japanese fashion that went down there. A little bit of Dolce & Gabbana when it wasn't quite so ornate. Like they actually used to do some good, simple tops and things like that.
Wow, I don't see you as a Dolce girl.
Nothing flashy, just like the well-fit. I mean, they used to do a
beautifully.
They used to do a few sort of simple things that were just beautifully cut and really high quality because, you know, the Italians.
Oh.
Yeah. So I did end up with a few nice, Jill Sander was still going.
Beautiful.
She used to do some great suits, so I got a few suits. I mean, Calvin Klein even had still like fashion at that time, not just underwear. And
so you seriously filled your boots?
I mean, compared to most people, I would say no. If you look at Jenna Lyon's closet, which is like a whole apartment, no, right? I still have like a realistic kind of closet. It's the same thing with my brain. If I have too many things, I just get confused.
And had you planned what you were going to wear to get married in, or was that part of the Barney's trolley dash?
No, so we got married before the trolley dash, and actually we decided to get married on Thursday. We had to go get a license. We had bought the license, or we went to, I think you go to City Hall to get the license. So we got our license, and you have to wait 48 hours before you're allowed to get married. So we probably got our license on Tuesday, and they said, well, what about Friday? So we just took Friday off. But I didn't have a ring. We didn't have rings. I didn't have a dress. I had no shoes. So we got a car to pick us up from Thierry's house in Brooklyn, because he had a house in Brooklyn at that time. And we went to Soho. I went to Morgan Le Fay, which had like really kind of cool, a little bit rock starry dresses, but you could always find something beautiful there. I bought a dress. We got rings. I remember them saying, we can have these done by like May. And we were like, how about 2:00? These resized.
Tell me about the dress.
It was a beautiful, just sort of a brown multi-layered thing.
So
like
not white?
Not white. It was just the one that I looked good in. I didn't really care about white but I tried it on. And for me, when you're shopping for clothing, which I don't get to do very often, but the one rule I've learned is if it's not an instant yes, it's a no.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have to like shift around and you're not going like...
really good tip.
You will never wear it. If you have to like, if I lose 5 pounds, I'm going to look good in this. Or I wonder if I have the right things for it. Or maybe if I put this, it's like, no. If you don't put it on and go, then you should not buy it.
Yeah.
You got to keep looking.
Top tip. Top tip. Then you went on to create this amazing brand for super women, FitFlop. And I remember at the time having a pair of those Maasai barefoot technology trainers, which were effective. They were pig ugly. They ripped my feet to pieces, but they did the job. And then you came along and worked in a different approach to this biomechanically engineered shoe. How difficult was it to combine form and design with function?
Quite difficult. The main reason being that no one had ever thought of that before. So when I first set out to find a shoe that would do all the right things for your body when you walked in it, I thought I needed a shoe designer to help me. And so I would try to find shoe designers by networking. This was sort of early internet days, right? It wasn't like you could type in shoe designer or ask ChatGPT.
I was going to say ask ChatGPT.
What kind of professional do I need if I want to biomechanically engineer a shoe? There was no such thing. So I just thought shoe designers, and you kind of know, well, I'll find the shoe design college or fashion college or whatever, and they'll send me to someone. And I remember making so many different people sign a non-disclosure agreement because I had this idea about a shoe that would work with your body and, do all, align it and do all these multitasking shoe. Because there were no good-looking shoes, actually, that were comfortable at all. I mean, I, too, would go to Barney's, probably same weekend, or maybe another weekend. It's like my favorite weekend destination when I lived in New York. And you go to the Barney's shoe floor, and you'd be wearing, I'd buy a pair of Anda Mühlemeister beautiful flats that I thought, well, these are really cool, and they look like they're going to be really comfortable, and literally be trying to walk to the office or walk my child to school, and they would be coming off my feet, right? They're so fashionable shoes are not always fit with any kind of care or any concern for the body.
Yeah.
And how the shoe affects the body. And to this day, I'm still really fascinated by the fact that if you make a shower gel, right, a body wash, a sudsy thing that is going to go down the drain and not really affect you whatsoever, you have to test that body wash for 60 days on 60 people to make sure it has no negative effect on those people.
Yeah.
You can, however, design a 5-inch heel that will pinch the nerves of someone's foot and damage them forever and put it on the shelf, no problem.
It's extraordinary, isn't it, when you think about it? And, killer heels.
Can be killer.
Yeah. Who was it? Someone I read, I think, is it Dolly Parton? Because she has always worn heels, literally even slippers with heels.
Wow.
She now cannot... when she walks in bare feet, she's walking around on her tiptoes.
Like Barbie.
Like Barbie.
Yes.
I might have that completely wrong. I'm sorry, Dolly, if I have got that wrong.
We love Dolly.
We love Dolly.
Even if she has to walk on her tiptoes, she's a legend. Legend.
She's such a legend. Now, so you created
FitFlop, yes.
FitFlop.
I found, I would interview these shoe designers and then I would tell them what I wanted to create. And they would say, well, they'd look at me like I was a lunatic and then say, I don't know how to do that. I just draw shoes. And that was one after another after another.
So did you go to an engineer or how did you get the technology in there? Because it's real technology, isn't it?
Yeah. In the end, through another conversation I was having with someone else, I said, I'm trying to do this, by the way. And it was an academic from Swansea. And he said, oh, you need to come and meet with our biomechanics department. That's where I realized, actually he said biomechanics. And if you were Canadian, you'd say biomechanics. So I then took a train to Swansea and met with their biomechanics department. I have another hilarious story, but too long for now, about that meeting. And then I finally found someone who was working for me, emailed me and said, hey, did you realize that London South Bank University has a biomechanics department? So I made an appointment to go meet them and walked in, described to these two guys who were their, professors of biomechanics or biomechanics, what I wanted to do. And Dr. Dave Cook looked at me and he goes, I know how you can do that. You do X, Y, and Z.
And from the initial prototype.
Yes, which looked like a lump of coal.
I was going to say, was that really hideous?
Oh my God, it was so hideous. I remember them bringing it out and then measuring it and having people walk in it, and they had all the electrodes hooked up to the models' bodies.
Fascinating.
Oh, it was incredible. It's how apparently they do animation by doing this, right? So they could measure what does it do to the gait, how much pressure is on the heel strike. They had heat maps on the bottom of the feet, so you could see that the pressure was being diffused perfectly across the whole foot, which is so good for your whole body because it stimulates your organ systems, all of this stuff. But I remember looking at it going, I don't care if that thing like lifts my butt to between my shoulder blades. I am not leaving the house in those.
So how did you take it from the lump of coal to what we now know as FitFlop?
So really, this was quite a lucky situation. I had remembered that one of the companies that manufactured Sexy Mother Pucker for Soap and Glory happened to tell me during a Hello, This Is Who We Are meeting when I had first moved to London and was looking at different labs to work on Soap and Glory with, that in part of their presentation about the history of their lab and their company, they had a sister business that sourced shoes for M&S, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So they were a footwear sourcing business, and they had these cosmetic manufacturers out in Trowbridge. And I just remember thinking, wow, this shoe is actually, once we had the results back from what Dr. Dave, I call him Dr. Dave, had engineered, it was like, I'm not taking this to one of the big guys because who knows, but it would be a David and Goliath situation. I didn't want to end up there. And then I had remembered, wait, the people who make Sexy Mother Pucker, they do footwear. So I called them and then had a meeting with their sourcing person. They set me up with a shoe designer who then went to work with Dr. Dave to make sure that the shoe and the biomechanics were something wearable. So the first one was like really quite crude. It was just this sandal. It was kind of like sporty, looked like a flip-flop, chunky sole, but we sold millions of them.
Yep, no, I remember it well. And there's nothing better than multitasking.
No.
As we walk, we
Nothing
lift our
better.
bottoms.
Yes.
I love it. You're a woman of words, I always think. You're probably one of the most talented copywriters I've ever come across. But I'd like to know how you would want someone else to describe your style DNA. In 3 words.
Okay. Missing in action.
No, stop it. Stop it. I'm not taking that.
That's my answer. I think I've had to work really hard because my body is not like a typical, feminine woman's body with like tiny shoulders and, a chest and long legs and like perfect knees. As my friend Ali said about my friend Ali is a creative director and she used to work in the music industry, and she would tell me about certain people who, when she'd have to style them for record covers, it was like impossible because there was nothing easy, right? And I once did, Carla Welch is quite a famous stylist now in Hollywood. Before she was that famous, when she just first got together with Matthew, who was her photographer, now husband, they recruited me to do this ad for charity for a rug company. And I warned her. I said, don't try and get me in a dress. Like, whatever you do not bring dresses. And she's like, oh, I'll just bring a few, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I'm telling you, it is hard to dress me. It's like,
what did you end up in?
Oh my God.
A care of a stylist. That would be quite interesting to know.
She didn't listen, right? And also I had just had a baby. So there's like then I was like you get a little thicker, right? And I'd had sort of boobs for the first time in my life because you get them and then they go back away. So they disappear again. So I was not even having like the super slim upper body that I would normally have, which would be easy because then you do like you could then do a long dress or a long skirt and some kind of slim top, but I didn't have that. I didn't even have my like muscular arms at the time. And she I kept saying, no, not a dress, not a dress, not a dress. And she's like, come on, try it on, try it on, try it on. And I remember this is like one of those traumatic fashion experiences. I try it on and she looks at me and she goes, I see what you're saying. It was like, I told you. But, then you just feel like, oh, I can never wear a dress again. But I don't have the knees for it, right? And so I have to stick with that style, which means it does become kind of a uniform. But defaulting to Japanese stuff just really works for me.
I mean, I know that you obviously get photographed a lot, and I know also that you're very aware of who you are and what you are. And Yeah, I know that you also sat for the legendary Irving Penn. And did you know in advance how he was planning to style you for that shoot?
Yeah, no. So it was quite interesting when Vogue was, always shooting with Mr. Penn back in that day. Phyllis Bosnick, who was the sittings editor, was one of my facial clients. So she would come in and I would be giving her facial and she'd say, oh, Mr. Penn wants to do a shoot about blah, 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 blah. Do you have anything? Like she was sort of looking for what can we, physically kind of style onto what looks cool. What can we stick on a model's face that is going to look really cool? What are the latest trends in beauty? And so I'd be giving her a facial going, well, we've got this wax thing or we've got this blah, blah, blah mask or whatever. And so she ended up recruiting me to come in and be like the prop stylist for him for a couple of shoots. So we did one shoot where we had like one of those thermal masks that you put over a piece of gauze. It was actually really cool. And then it hardens and then you kind of lift it off. So it's, and then we had one shoot where we were I had all this really colorful wax for body hair removal that wasn't the model's funnest. They didn't really enjoy that one. It was a little like screaming coming from the studio, but it was, all these beautiful colored wax that we were sort of spreading onto their skin. So there was that. And then he asked Phyllis, he didn't ask me, which was quite funny because, but he asked Phyllis if I would be the model for the next one. And then she said he wanted to do something like seaweed or something. And I was like, well, okay. And so we actually found a whole bunch of really weird looking seaweed. And he decided to turn me into a sea creature and put like crazy seaweed all over my head. And I had like one eye and
it's an
seaweed.
Extraordinary image.
It's kind of
and did you
freaky.
Did you just let him get on with it because he was this legend?
Well, I couldn't see. At that point, you're like laying against the board, right? So I couldn't move. And I remember him like slapping pieces of seaweed across my face and just being like, okay. But don't smudge the makeup.
Other than Irving Penn, are you very much in control of what you wear for
a photo shoot? Yes. Yeah, generally, because you know what? There's just no point.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure the same with you. It's like, what? Who's going to know how your body will look better than you? Nobody, right? At this stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of know.
I mean, talking at this stage. Is, when you think of hair and beauty as we evolve.
Yes.
What are your tips to staying youthful as we age, or as we progress in years, however you want to put it, whatever.
Get smarter.
Get smarter. Get more into our own skin.
Yeah.
Into our power. But what, as such an aesthetic person, what would you say are good tips?
Oh, I think, get the best haircut you can.
Yeah.
And your natural hair color, or as close to whatever that was when you were younger, is what you should have. Like fighting against it means that you have to then put a lot of makeup on that matches whatever that hair color is. And so as close to your natural hair color as possible, if you are dyeing your hair, is game changing.
That's a very interesting point.
Yeah. And I think people either go to a stylist who tries to do something a little bit off, or they don't know if they're warm or cool or whatever it is. And as soon as you change your hair too much from what goes with your natural skin tone, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. And if you can find someone who can cut your hair and give your hair a style that really is your signature. I mean, I have Garen. I only get over to New York like once every 6 months or so, but I will literally not book my flight until I know he's available because he cuts my hair and I feel like a totally different person. I haven't been there since October, so it's grown out quite a lot. But when he cut it, people will literally stop me on the street and go, wow, I love your haircut.
Yeah.
And you just feel like the character that you want to inhabit when you have that perfect haircut. Taking great care of your skin, obviously, right? Sunscreen. And I think just like knowing what your style is.
Yeah.
Like there is a uniform. By the time you hit like 40, 50, you know what you can pull out of your closet and it's going to look great. It doesn't really change that much.
I always think it's what makes you feel good.
Confident.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whatever that is.
Yes.
And for each of us, it's going to be something different. But if we're feeling good, you just exude a confidence.
Yeah. You want to feel like yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you've got a style icon?
Oh my God. Well, okay. I'm going to say it's probably, oh my God, that's a really hard one because I love Ray Kawakubo, but sometimes she's so out there that you can't do that, right? But
she's an icon.
She's an icon, and she also has such a vision. But yes, I mean, she's an icon. I wouldn't be able to emulate that, but she is an absolute icon. Yeah.
Good answer.
And fearless.
Would you think you had a worst fashion moment?
It was a worst haircut moment.
A worst haircut moment? Mm-hmm. Tell me about that.
It was... Okay, I'll just say 3 words. Perm. Asymmetrical.
80s?
80s. Like, you can just imagine it from there. It was too painful to relive.
How long was said haircut?
Oh my God, it was so bad. I don't think I even wanted to go to school. This was some guy. His name was Jay. I still remember the name. I could picture him in my head, and I think he thought he would do something like really cool on me. And I was kind of game. You know, I've always been a little bit like, yeah, let's try it. But I remember getting home and just thinking, I can't go to school like this. It was probably in grade 9, maybe grade 10. No, grade 9, 8. And I mean, it was devastating and traumatic. And I don't even know how I got out of that haircut. You know, when someone cuts your hair so badly that you almost need to, you know, but I couldn't do a buzz cut in grade 8. That would have been just too extreme.
Let's leave that trauma behind.
Yeah, maybe we should cut this part.
Yes. We talk about travel. You're constantly hopping on and off planes. Are you a good hacker?
Relatively, yes, now, yes. And you know what I've realized? If you don't have what you need when you get there, and you're going somewhere like New York or London or other, you can buy it. I used to really panic, and I was like, wait a second, just like order it.
It's so true.
Yes.
Favorite luggage?
Oh, well, I actually love the away luggage because the wheels, there are 4 wheels, right? And you can just pile your stuff on top of it, and it's just how you can walk through the airport with those luggages.
It's so true because actually I've got the 2-wheel wheelie.
Yeah, not
I am
good.
forever tripping myself up on it.
And also you have to kind of hold your arm like this.
You end up with a sore shoulder.
Yeah.
Good one.
Ruins your posture. Back to posture.
Back to posture. Wardrobe secrets. Do you have a guilty secret brand?
Well, what does guilty even mean?
Well, I was going to say...
Is it that it's something you don't want to admit that you buy, or is it that you spend too much on it?
Oh, now you're turning the tables on me.
What is guilty?
Guilty is... Ooh. Let's say the most expensive item.
Well, actually, I think the most expensive clothing item I've ever bought was for my husband when he turned, I don't know, maybe 45 or 50 or something like that. And there was this Hermes parka.
Parka?
Yeah, with layers and things that kind of snapped out. And it weighs about 40 kilos.
Do you ever pinch it from him?
It is like a weighted vest. It is so heavy that when he hands it to people at restaurants to hang, they go like this, like that. But it's amazing. Shearling lined, like just so beautiful. But I don't know why I find it easier to spend money on him. But I will buy, like, I've bought the odd piece from the row, right? I've bought the odd Yohji Yamamoto or Comme des Garçons pieces that are kind of those incredible layered coats that do many things that are really pieces of art. They really are pieces of art. Like clothing, good clothing is art.
Have you ever bought a super expensive designer bag?
Not that expensive. How expensive is expensive? It's all relative.
Pounds
right?
per wear.
Don't think about it.
You never do. You never justify it.
No, because if I'm going to wear it, I'm going to wear it. And then I don't even think about it. Yeah. It's just like, it's again, that instant yes. It's like, am I going to wear this everywhere? Yes, I'm just going to get it. And it doesn't really matter. Yeah. I'm not one of those people who goes out and shops all the time and you just think, oh my God.
I don't see that.
No, I don't have time.
What's your approach to sustainable fashion then?
Well, I think if you love it and you're going to wear it for a really, really long time, it's sustainable.
Very good one. Very good one. Do you buy vintage ever?
Not really.
Any reason?
Well, I don't have time to go sorting through it. Many things. And of course, probably vintage now is maybe a little bit different than vintage when I was 20, because vintage when I was 20 was cut for the 1950s kind of body type, which is not mine. So I just wouldn't find anything. Yeah. And I really like my clothes to be kind of fresh. And that can be difficult also. So it's a time issue.
I get that. I get that. Let's spin on to some quick fire questions. What fashion advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
That's, if it's not an instant yes, it's a no.
Good one. Which fashion trend would you most like to see make a comeback?
That's a pass. And I don't understand the next one. What does Room 101 mean?
Do you know what? If you're not British, you don't seem to understand what Room 101 means.
No, I've read
101
that one.
is where you consign things really to the bin.
Oh, like it never comes back.
Like you just never, ever, ever want to see it again.
I don't know if I ever saw it in the first place.
The perm?
The perm, no. I think maybe like flares. Like really big flares. Who
Loons.
can wear those? Is that what they're called? I mean,
They were called loons in the 70s, but that was maybe slightly before your time. What was your last impulse buy?
I think it was this jacket.
Was it?
It was quite good. I did well on that day.
You did well on that day.
There might have been 5 or 6 impulse buys.
Your views on tattoos?
Oh, I used to really think, oh my God, why are people doing that to themselves? How will they ever get them off? Right? And then they became so ubiquitous that now when you see people who are like fully covered in tattoos, it's normal, right? It's changed so much. It used to really be a thing. It was like you were a yes or no tattoo person. Now, I really don't care if other people have them. I used to think that if your child got one, it said something about them, right? Like
or
you're going to
you.
be judged. Yes. But I have so many friends, older than me, younger than me, who got tattoos of random things like Woodstock, Tinkerbell. I mean, who's to judge?
Beauty treatment you couldn't give up?
Oh, hair coloring and a good haircut.
Minimalism or maximalism?
Minimalism.
Couture or charity shop?
Neither.
Crocs, cute or puke?
Puke. Sorry, Crocs. They do well, though. They sell a lot.
They sell a lot.
A lot.
Sneakers or stilettos?
Sneakers.
Skinnies or boyfriends?
Boyfriends.
Or white legs?
You know this.
Sports luxe or rock chick?
Totally sports luxe.
Trend or style?
Style.
Color or monochrome?
Monochrome.
Experimental or uniform?
Uniform.
Cashmere or cotton?
Both.
Hoarder or editor?
Editor.
Shapewear or sexy lingerie?
Neither. Have you seen Negative Underwear? Not that I'm doing a plug for them or anything like that, but have you seen that brand? It's really good. So Jenna also, right, told me about them because I said, you should do underwear. She said that you can never do underwear better than Negative Underwear. And it is like somewhere in between, I guess, sexy lingerie. It's not shapewear as such, but it is like great, very wearable underwear. I highly recommend.
To check out. Tights or stockings?
I think they're both a plot against women. Yeah.
Bikini or one piece?
One piece.
Beanie or beret?
Beanie.
And finally,
yes,
Marcia, at the end of the day, do you or don't you wear in bed?
I love a really super light cotton men's PJ.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, your witty, informed answers. I mean, as you know, we can chat until we're at the top of the mountain. But thank you for your time today on this miserable, miserable London day. You'll be so ready to get on that plane.
It has not been miserable spending the beginning of it with you.
Oh, bless you. Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.